Nice to see you.
Okay, great. Let me just share my screen, then we can begin.
Lovely.
So let me hit that and start from the top. Sorry. So thanks everyone who's joined us today. My name is Sizo Hlophe, as we already know, and I'll be conducting the workshop on empowering musicians through data-driven social media strategies. So I'm from Eswatini, and Eswatini is a country between South Africa and Mozambique. And we have a population of about 1.2 million people, which is very little. And if you are to work in music, it's not a lot of people to be, I would say, thinking you would make a sustainable living out of music. So in a way, most of the work that you end up doing is your strategy is to export artists. And through this exporting of artists, you have to work a lot with metrics, which is what we are going to look at today. And I have some really nice examples for you where we look at some of case studies from Eswatini. So I'm a coordinator at Momentual, and I'm co-founder of Antidote Music. And Antidote Music is a record label that I started in 2012 with a few friends. And we were just looking at how there was no music that could be found from Eswatini on the internet. And we were in university, and a lot of people were asking us the question, where can we find music from Eswatini? And we also went on the internet and we couldn't find anything. But then we were musicians, so we started our own record label to release our own music. And we became the first to put music on the internet in Eswatini. So fast forward to 2022, I co-founded Antidote Culture Foundation, which is an organization that looks to give capacity to Eswatini artists. So I've been working in a number of ecosystems in Southern Africa. And specifically in my country last year, we ran the Vukubone Sound Lab, which is an accelerator program that fast-tracks the next Eswatini artists. So we were focusing on musicians, DJs, producers, and podcasters. So we were really just focusing on any artist that uses sound as a format. And then through that program, we established Yini Logu, and Yini Logu directly translates to what is this? And this is a facility that we opened in Eswatini where we wanted it to interact with the city. And it works as a gallery space, as a co-working space, and also as a music showcase space. And this is literally where I'm calling from today. And a few years ago, I was lucky to be part of Digital Lab Africa, which is a project by Chimolohong Precinct. And Chimolohong Precinct is owned by the University of Witwatersrand in Johannesburg. And I was the accelerator coordinator for music. And I was mentoring African musicians, everyone from across the region who were focusing on music as a format. And part of the program, some of the artists were working purely on XR, animation, and video games. And then part of the things that we do, we have a platform we call Unleash the Wolf, which is really a mini concert, but for DJs, where we kind of create cohesion between Southern African electronic music DJs. So we've been doing it in Eswatini and in Johannesburg, and we hope to take it out to Mozambique and other Southern African countries. So what brings us here today? What do we know? Recorded music so far in 2023 made 26.2 billion, and that's a lot of money. But then we are faced with the predicament of 120,000 songs are released each day, of which I guess this is why we are here today on how do we apply some strategies to just be above some of the people in our communities and ultimately the world. 66.2 of the world have access to internet, and 4.95 billion people are using social media. And TikTok alone as a platform has 67% conversion rate towards streaming platforms. So this in particular would mean that there's a relationship between social media and streaming. And we're going to look closer into that relationship. So over the years, music has become a bit more social, and we use it to discover artists, to discover new music. We use it to promote music, and we use it to consume music. But then how do we approach this ecosystem? So in our end, I come from a small country, and we don't work as machines. And this relates to all upcoming artists. They can't work as machines like the Sonys and the Warner Music, which are big corporations who have all this system in place. So we have to iterate and optimize, which is a DIY approach to music. So we look closely at the relationship between social media and the DSPs. The DSPs are your Apple Music, are your Spotify, Deezer, and some of the social media platforms have become DSPs like Instagram, Facebook, TikTok itself. So this relationship is whatever happens on social media translates to the DSPs. And sometimes what happens on the DSPs organically translates to social media. And now, just to go back, and there are specific metrics that we can look at in both platforms. So within social media, you look at your social growth, you look at engagement, you look at reach, and you look at what territories is your music being played in. And on the DSPs, you look at your playlist real estate, and this looks like how many playlists have playlisted your music. And then you look at monthly listeners, which is today, if you meet anyone on the streets and you say you're a musician, they go directly to your Spotify and then they look at how many people are listening to you in a month. So you also look at territory, you look at charts, and you look at how much revenue are you making. So these factors are the ones that you kind of concentrate in when you're an upcoming musician, and each and every one of them affects what you get to do on each of the platforms. So I'm going to present a few case studies, and some might be familiar to some of you. Maybe one might be familiar to some of you, and the others are musicians that I work with directly. As I mentioned before, most of the work that we do is development work, so we don't work like big corporations like your Sonys. So I'll give you the first case study. We might all know who Uncle Waffles is. So Uncle Waffles is from my country, Eswatini, even though South Africa has claimed her to be theirs. Because she's dominantly based in South Africa. So one interesting fact that I would like to mention, within Southern Africa, the biggest music market is South Africa, which means that every musician in all the Southern African countries, they want to break out in South Africa before they can break out anywhere else in the world. And this is what made Uncle Waffles take on the journey to, when she started DJing immediately after COVID, she took the journey to go to Johannesburg and found a slot at an event And she played that event, and her dance moves and her playing was captured on video. And that video went viral on the internet. And it even caught the attention of Drake. So that video alone on Twitter had 5.2 million streams, and it had 30,000 retweets, just Twitter alone. And that kind of propelled, those numbers propelled Uncle Waffles, who didn't actually come back home. Because of those numbers, she stayed in South Africa, and she got herself a booking agent and started performing events in South Africa. And then today I was going through her chart metric, which kind of made me understand a bit more some of the moves that she's been making. So when I went to Chartmetric, Uncle Waffle's secondary market was the US. And a year ago, Uncle Waffles was on a US tour. So we can already see data at play here where the artist's secondary market is where she goes to tour. The primary market is where she is. And what we've seen through that is she has managed to curate her own shows in South Africa, and they've sold out. And now she went to the US and had a US tour and played one of the biggest stages in the US called Coachella. And to create a UK link, Waffles 2 years ago had a residency at BBC Radio 1. And we can look at this as Uncle Waffles' team assessing the UK market for her. And then a year later, Uncle Waffles comes back to curate her own show called We Love Uncle Waffles. And that show sold out a month in the UK before she even came for the event. So here we're already seeing how Uncle Waffles' team was utilizing her numbers, basically, assessing markets and knowing where to move or what to do. And now I'm going to bring it a bit home to my record label. Uncle Waffles is not with my record label, she's in South Africa, but with my record label, also it has, interestingly, a UK link. We have an artist, his name is called Sooks. So when we started releasing Sooks in 2016. And when we went through Sooks's numbers, we realized that he had a big market in South Africa. And of course, South Africa has the biggest market in Southern Africa. But then we wanted to understand what really was happening. So we took Sooks on a trip to just visit Johannesburg, which is the mecca for electronic music in Southern Africa. And he attended a few events, not as a performer, but just to be there. And when he introduced himself, he realized that people knew the name, but now they can put a face to the name. So just that weekend alone, when Sooks visited Johannesburg, he managed to get a gig on that particular weekend. But then he went back to Eswatini, and then we looked at the numbers and we realized that, okay, if South Africa is the biggest market for him at the moment, let's submit some music to some South African record labels. And now this is data at play where we're making decisions for these artists so that we can see if really this is a market where he can break into. So we sent music to 2 record labels in South Africa. One has a new office, actually opened a new office in London. It's called Stay True Sound. It's originally from South Africa, but it recently opened an office in the UK. And the other is Deep Stitched. And through these record labels, it meant that Sooks's music would be playlisted on South African radio. It will be playlisted among some of the top playlists on DSPs in South Africa. And that kind of grew Sooks's audience. And when Sooks's audience started growing, he started visiting South Africa more, and he was getting, I would say, a minimum 2 events to perform at a month. And we kind of looked at that and we said, it is costly for him to come back to Eswatini because between Eswatini and Johannesburg, it's 3 hours. But then it was a bit costly for him to go to Johannesburg every second week. And then eventually we said, maybe let's attempt to get Sooks to stay in Johannesburg for 2 months. But then him staying in Johannesburg for 2 months propelled him to greater heights. Now he has moved to Joburg full-time, and he's performed some of the biggest stages in South Africa. And just in October, he performed on the same stage as Stormzy. So, and this is an artist from Eswatini that has worked with us closely, and he still is our artist. But then there is a UK link to this. So when we were looking at Sooks's songs, how they were performing, there was one particular song that was performing the best, like above average on all the other songs. And we had to look who is playing this song, or who has utilized this song. So we started scraping the internet to try to find geographically who played the song, where did they play the song. And we discovered that the song was played in the UK by a UK DJ. His name is Adjez. So Adjez is also celebrated in South Africa. He has a big market in South Africa, and now he's picked up this song from this guy and he plays it. And then what we then did when we discovered that, we submitted a demo to Adjez's record label. And Adjez, because he's already played the song, he signed the demo. And the demo was released on a UK record label called Adjez record company. And when that song was released, just 2 months ago, Adjez was in South Africa, and they were together at an event with Sooks, and they played the same event with Sooks. And this in itself kind of shows that some of the decisions are really based on the numbers that we see through the DSPs or through our distributors and through the activity on our social media. And now the third case study is a young lady that we started working with recently. So Sanilo, that's her name, is half Swazi and half Malawian. And I will mention why this is kind of important. So when we released Sanilo's single, it was picked up by Apple Music as track of the week, which means it's the song of the week in 8 different countries in Southern Africa. And we looked at that and we said, if we can go anywhere with this particular project, we might get an audience. We might get someone who can say, I can listen to what you're saying. So we attempted to get a big name collaboration for Sanilo. Just during that week when this song was Song of the Week, we wrote to a South African rapper by the name of Zulu Boy, and he said, yeah, sure. Because Sanilo at the time, her song was at the front of Apple Music. So when you open Apple Music, the song was literally on the front. And Zulu Boy saw this and said, I'd love to do a feature with this particular artist. So we got this song, and they made this song. We put it on the project, and the project was released. But then on that particular release, we realized that all the songs that we put forward as singles that we trusted so much were not the ones that were performing the best. And we picked up a song where Sanilo uses Chichewa, which is a language from Malawi. And now when we started looking at this particular song, it had grown an audience in Malawi. And mind you, we have already established an audience for Sanilo in Southern Africa. And now these audiences, when you combine them together, this song is performing better than most of the song in the project. And now we're sitting here today and we're saying, wait, what's the next strategy for Sanilo? What's the next strategy for this particular song? Maybe we want to shoot a music video for the song, but then these are numbers that we've looked at recently. And today, Sanilo has amassed about 18,000 streams in 6 months. And this is above any artist in Eswatini, in Eswatini numbers, which of course, we are a small population. But then I want to throw it back to you. And we're going to look at a few scenarios with Sanilo, where we have a language that is Chichewa that has opened a market in Malawi. And we have Sanilo being playlisted on South African playlists. We have Sanilo growing in the South African market. But when we look at the numbers again, we see the US as Sanilo's third biggest market. And now we have these three scenarios where she has a growing audience in South Africa. She has love from his mother country, which is Malawi. And now the third biggest market, when we look at the numbers, is the US. And now it's, what could be the next strategy for Sanilo? Maybe I would throw it to you guys. Anyone who wants to open their mic, what would be some of the key metrics that we could look at? What would be the next move?
Well, targeting the US further. What contacts have you got in the US, and would you be able to get us some press? Yeah, and what would be the possibility of going on tour from, I keep wanting to say Swaziland, sorry, Sizo, I'm still getting my head around.
It still is Swaziland.
I was born,
even though we're thinking it's fine.
Yeah, I was born and brought up in Kenya, so for me, and left in the 70s, and it was Swaziland back then. So, but yeah, definitely, it sounds like there's loads of potential there with the US and targeting the US. But yeah, what would be the cost of trying to get her a tour out in the US? Have you got that backing, that finance, that budget, or do you need to carry on building in Southern Africa?
So yes, so just to answer that, so those count as some of the things, some of the things that you look at, because even with Souks has a big market now. His third biggest market is the UK. And now, does it mean that we just take him on tour? We don't know. We might not have the resources to take him on tour in the UK, but then what could be done? Maybe we can get some editorial support in the UK just to continue build that audience. And then eventually when that audience is ripe enough, we can take him on a visit to UK. We attempted to take him on a visit to Amsterdam 2 years ago for the Amsterdam dance event. The DJs knew him, but the audiences didn't know him, so he didn't have a market in Amsterdam, and he didn't get to play any event in Amsterdam. So, these are some of the metrics or things that you look at, and Amsterdam for him is possibly the 5th country within his audience. So it wasn't really feasible, but we wanted him to get an experience of what electronic music sounds like from outside of Africa.
I mean, for him, can you get a measure of where his music's being played in the UK, or is it? I can't remember the DJ that you said. Was it Adjes?
Adjes, yes.
Yeah. Is there any mileage in him? Well, he'll have contacts over here. He'll be able to get press, radio airplay. Kiss FM's worth a punt. you know, a shot basically.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
So anyone else who has ideas, key metrics to look at?
I'm just putting things are in the chat. I don't know if you can see that people are adding there. I think there's trying to look at the Malawi connection. Are there any other big Malawi artists in the US? Could they collab with them? People are saying about touring in the US, maybe looking at where Malawi expats live in the US, and I don't know. That's what's coming up in the chat, and some of that was me. I'm also reading it out for you, so apologies everything else.
Yes. No, it's okay. It's okay.
And Raj has suggested radio play.
Yeah. So initially, the point of this exercise is not really for me to get like the precise, feedback. It's like, where does this data come from? And we've mentioned radio, and radio is one of the biggest drivers for artist data. Playlists, editorials, these are some of the biggest drivers for artist data. And this is the data that then gives you the information on what the next move would be. Even with Uncle Waffles, if when we look at Chartmetric is one of the platforms where you can get your artist or any artist data. I'll just put it on the chat. Any artist data. When you look at it, you kind of, it gives you a picture of what you should focus on, or where you are lacking, or where you are doing the most. So literally there is no specific strategy, but the data informs the next move. Like for us, when we look at Sanilo now, we saw that song from Malawi doing well, and that might look like us doing a music video for that particular song. So there is no fixated strategy, especially when you're an upcoming artist.
Right.
Yeah. It's a DIY approach.
Yeah, yeah, we know DIY, don't we, Sal?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
When you look at Chartmetric, do you then go and look at social? So, for instance, if Instagram was Sanila's most popular, do you then go and look at the matrix in Instagram?
Yes.
And I don't know, because I haven't got a business account on Instagram. I don't know if Instagram breaks down percentages of who is following from different countries. I know obviously Facebook does.
Yes. So Facebook and Instagram, they use the same analytics. So give you all of that information, and all of that information can then come into informing what strategy you can use in terms of propelling the next possible wave for that particular song, or possible wave for the one thing that you're promoting at that particular moment.
Yeah.
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 Would you say that to kind of get this type of exposure using socials, that video is better than anything else than just the audio? Do you need video out there?
So short form video has proved to be the most effective. So for example, with Uncle Waffles, there was a fan-driven video that made her go viral. So most of these, what we've noticed is when we hire a videographer and do, I would say, a professional video, even if it's short form for an artist, the artist-driven videos are the fan-driven videos are the ones that perform better than the ones that are too curated, So for example, with Sooks, when we premiered one of his songs, he played it at an event, and a fan took a video of that particular song and posted it on social media. And that compelled us, well, the song kind of went viral in our standards, And it compelled us to start a conversation with our distributor to say, how can we fast track the release of the project? And through that particular song, we then had a new strategy for his entirety of the project, where we released one song from the project every 6 weeks. And then we had the bundle of the project come out. And when you compile all the numbers from each of those songs in 1 week, after the release of the entirety of the project, Spotify compiled all the numbers at 100,000 streams. And then when you put those out on social media, it looks as though those streams are accumulated in 1 week. But then because all these songs are part of this project, they accumulated over time. But then when you put it on social media, it looks like that particular song made 100 streams in a week. But then social media also is a game of perception.
So then, I mean, with other videos for the different songs, did you then use a phone rather than getting a film crew in?
Yes.
And then
Yes. So what we started doing is whenever we have to premiere a song for Souks, particularly Souks, because there's different strategies for different artists, particularly for Souks, the phone videos perform better than when we hire someone to shoot a video. Yeah. So fan-driven videos have proven to perform better than curated videos. Yes.
Yeah. Cool.
Anyone else?
No.
I have a question, Sizo,
Yeah.
but it's from another part of the presentation. When you had this song with Sarnilo that became a success, and then you put a collaboration on top of it,
Yeah.
how did you make the arrangement for the royalties? Like, how do you split any royalties from streaming? And yes, and that conversation with the artist.
With the particular artist.
Yes, because if I got it right, you had a hit with Sarnilo, and then you did like a second version with a big artist, right?
Yeah. It was
And
on a different song. So we told the bigger artist that we are working on a project, and this is the artist, and we sent a screenshot of Apple Music. And when you're in the front of Apple Music, that's mostly where the big artists are. And this artist was like, oh, this artist is about to blow up. Let me just jump on her wave. Whereas we were using the big artist to jump on his wave. And then the royalty split on that particular song was 50-50. Chartmetric is expensive when you're looking for further data. There is free data that is enough for you to make decisions. And then if you want further data, like any of the other platforms, then you have to pay. Yeah, 140, that's a lot. But that's a lot of data to unlock. Yeah. So there is a free-to-use version of Chartmetric where you don't need to pay, and you can get most of the data that you need as an upcoming artist.
I'll be looking into that. Thank you.
Yeah, so you can go there and search any artist that you want to, and yeah, it's going to pop up. Like with Uncle Waffles, these are her numbers showing here. So Pandora is big in the US, which kind of confirms that she has a market in the US. And these are some of the best performing social media platforms. And this kind of allows her to have a strategy for each and every social media platform and knows what kind of content works best for each and every platform.
I was surprised that it was Twitter that went viral.
Yes.
Twitter is such a difficult platform for promotion.
It is when you are intentionally promoting, but Twitter becomes the best platform for organic material. So with Uncle Waffles, it was at a time where everyone was on their phone because of COVID. And
Yeah.
most of the controversial stuff was running through Twitter, and then a video was just dropped on Twitter, and then it just went viral. And from Twitter, that same video started being posted on Instagram. It was posted on TikTok, and then combined all of those views kind of made Uncle Waffles to decide that I'm moving out of Eswatini and moving to South Africa.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Going to the big country.
Yes. Unfortunately.
How do you take advantage of TikTok? What do you have any special sort of approaches with TikTok?
With TikTok, there is a particular, well, there are a couple of examples of music. I'll make particularly with African music that I've seen. There is a song called Love Watiti. The song was released 2 years before it had a dance challenge on TikTok. And now it's the biggest streamed song in Africa. It's called Love Watiti. And the strategy therefore for TikTok was, and it was fan driven. It was a dance move that came with the songs. Someone posted a dance move, and then more people started developing their own dance moves. But then today, artists are literally collaborating with dancers, literally collaborating with content creators to kind of give that spark on their TikTok, on TikTok, and then hoping that the song can go viral. So most of these, TikTok is big on gimmicks. So you have to use a form of gimmick. It could be a dance, it could be anything else, just to create that interest, and then people can jump on that interest. Another song is the Jerusalem song from South Africa that had a dance move during COVID, and it blew TikTok as well. So clearly dance moves are possibly the way for TikTok, but they are not the only way.
So Sally, Clonk needs to come up with a dance routine.
We've got one already. I can just picture it now. It's going to be amazing. I'm going to get on it. But one of us needs to have a TikTok account, which we don't currently because we're all old.
Yeah.
Well, old people videos, they go viral.
Yeah.
Brilliant. Mind.
Well, I know there's a DJ friend of mine. One of his tracks got picked up and was put on an animation, and through that he got his first record release, his single. He got signed for that particular single, but that went viral. But I think that was a TikTok influencer though who picked that track up. So I've heard that that's another route with TikTok, and and like you say, gimmicks and dance moves.
Yeah, that's how it works. But also Instagram Reels, same approach as TikTok.
Yeah,
they are the same kind of thing in a way. So the same strategies apply to TikTok.
Yeah, cool. Instagram.
Any more questions?
What's the best way to approach another artist for a collaboration?
Another artist. So with us, we use the numbers. We saw that the artist had an interest. That this goes to like bigger artists, but then with any other artists, you kind of assess how you want, because the thing about collaboration is, what are you looking for from that particular artist? Are you looking to make a nice song, but then can that nice song generate an audience? Or you really looking for their audience? So you also have these particular goals when you approach collaborations. You don't just do collaborations because it's a nice song. It could be a nice song, but are you looking to expand your audience through their audience? because it's a game of discoverability. So they're going to look at you and say, I want to tap into that particular artist audience. And you're going to look at them and say, I'd love to perform in the UK, or I'd love to have a certain percentage of their numbers on my profiles. And that's why you would do a collaboration. But then it's always good to do a collaboration for nice songs too. Yeah. How often is optimum for an artist to be posting on their social media and creating content? So what I've noticed with social media is, I mean, it goes to brand building. With brand building, you have to have like a content calendar where you intentionally have to post at a certain time or at a certain day. So with brands, when you are building a brand, you have to be consistent in whatever you're doing. And even with social media, you have to be consistent in the frequency at which you are posting. So also, it's like, what kind of content do you want to put out? So this content has to be relevant to the community that you have on social media. So it really differs. There's no specific formula, but then I would say once you have a way in which you've categorized your content, you now have to set a calendar to say, on these specific days, specific times, this is when I put out my content. And then you go back and you study the data, and you do what I mentioned, you iterate and optimize. You go back and study the data and say, okay, this didn't perform best. Maybe I need to shift it like this, or I need to add more posts in a week. So you assess what is really happening within your numbers. For example, with Sanilo, just a month ago, we asked her, what does your Spotify look like? And she's like, the numbers are going down. And we said, so you need to make activity on social media. So it goes to the connection that I made between social media and the streaming platforms. So she looked at the numbers on streaming platforms, and she knew that she needed to create content so that those numbers can go up, and also still being able to grow the numbers on the social media platform. So there are many factors that affect how frequently you post. But then, as I mentioned, once you have a formula, you kind of stick to it. And then if it doesn't work, you iterate again, and you come up with a new way. Any other questions? Thanks, James. Bye. Any more questions?
Anyone else?
I think that's quite a lot to take in and to start looking at, to be honest.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have a quick question.
Yeah.
I see that like a lot of the strategies like to pick up that something's working because of that data, and then you try to make a collaboration with someone to make it explode. When dealing with DJ Atches, well, I know the name. Like what do you think was like the thing that you were offering to him, like when pitching? Do you think it was just that the music was good, or was he like interested in having you as an ally in the territory, something like that?
So South Africa is also a territory for him, apart from us wanting to be in, or Sooks being in that particular record label. So South Africa is of interest to him. So we kind of knew that he comes to South Africa on tour. And when he comes to South Africa on tour, his biggest weapon is when he has artists who are big in South Africa as part of his catalog, because his catalog kind of creates this brand for him that is relevant to South Africans. So we kind of knew that this was his market as well. So for us to tap into his market, we play on that interest of his on South Africa. And there is actually another DJ friend of mine from the UK who, it's an interesting story because he's from Bristol and he lives in a farm and he has this amazing studio and he's released over 40 albums. His name is Andy Comte. So he said one day he went through his numbers to check how his music was performing, and he realized that a lot of streams and downloads were coming from South Africa. And he's in the UK and he's never been to South Africa. He knows nothing about South Africa. And he had an interest in this, and he went to his social media and he started seeing that a lot of people that were adding him were from South Africa. And one booking agent added him on social media on Facebook, and he messaged them and he said, hey, maybe I should do a tour in South Africa. So he was using the numbers that he was getting from South Africa to say, maybe I can do a tour in South Africa. And this booking agent said, yes, you are big here. And he didn't know this because he stays in a farm just making music and releasing it. And he put out some dates just to test the market, put out some dates to say, oh, I'll be in South Africa in these dates. And all those dates were taken. And he knew that he needed to buy a plane ticket to South Africa. And when he came to South Africa, he's been coming to South Africa every year. And now he has a sub-label of his that is South Africa based, and he has the other one in Bristol. So the numbers kind of showed him how to move. You know, South Africa is a market, then let me see if I can start a record label and come here on tour. He's not big in the UK, but he's big in South Africa. And the numbers were telling him that.
Yeah, that's not unusual. Not specifically South Africa, but you know, some UK artists find that some of their biggest audiences in Rio de Janeiro or New Zealand or Australia, and it's not UK, and they're desperately trying to break the UK, and you know, audiences are elsewhere. Out of interest, is there sort of genre specific? Because I mean, you've got in South Africa specifically, because it's got big cities like Joburg, Durban, Pretoria, Cape Town. Is there differences in the big cities to the style of music, or does the music just cross and it doesn't really matter?
So there is a dominance of amapiano across Africa.
Right.
I've been to some African countries and with an interest to listen to music from that particular city, and everything they play is amapiano. And then in South Africa specifically, when you go to Pretoria, you do find their own version. So South Africans are a community of people who are proud of who they are. So when they come from a specific city, they become proud of that specific city and proud of styles of music that are coming out of those specific cities. So even though amapiano could be big commercially across South Africa, but when you go to Pretoria, there is a style of music called Bakadi that originates from Pretoria. And you walk on the streets and it's the biggest thing that everyone is playing. And you go to Durban, you find Gqom. And Gqom actually had an international appeal at some point, but then amapiano overtook it. So Gqom originally comes from Durban. And if you go to Durban even today, you will find places still playing Gqom. And then if you go to Cape Town, they have this fight with Durban to say they are the originators of Gqom. So they have, they have their own version of Gqom, and that's the biggest thing that you will find in Cape Town. So, and then Johannesburg is like the melting point of all these styles. So you do find underground Gqom parties. you do find Bacardi parties, you do find, of course, Amapiano, which is the main thing for South, like Johannesburg is the commercial center for the whole of South Africa. So
Yeah.
the biggest genre in South Africa will be the biggest genre in Johannesburg. So Johannesburg has a huge platform for Amapiano, but then also it has these underground pockets of the other genres.
Yeah. So, and when it comes to music from the UK, Western music, specifically the UK, because we're in the UK, because, you know, US has its own big market.
Yeah.
But are there any specific bands or artists or styles of music that in Eswatini that you're interested in, and in, you know, or in Southern Africa generally? I mean, is it a market people should be looking at?
So on the more contemporary styles of UK music, there is a huge market, I would say, in South Africa. And Eswatini has one of the biggest festivals in Southern Africa called Bushfire, and that becomes one of the stages for UK artists. And South Africa is the main music market in Southern Africa. So artists like Shabaka Hutchins have performed in South Africa. Artists like Alpha Mist have performed in South Africa. So the more alternative styles have had an audience in South Africa. But then there is a huge interest in the hip hop style that Stormzy does, because Stormzy actually has headlined one of the biggest festivals in South Africa, actually at the same time as our artist was performing that festival. So Stormzy has been a headliner in South Africa. So there is an interest in UK music, but I've noticed that there is a bigger interest in the alternative styles of UK music.
Yeah, right.
Like
cool.
Like your Alpha Mist and your Shabaka Hutchins. And actually Shabaka Hutchins has a project in South Africa where he assembled jazz musicians, and it's called Shabaka and the Ancestors. And my assumption is, as a Black person, Africa is the land of his ancestors, and band members are ancestors for him.
Yeah.
So
But he could come from East Africa. You know, not everything's in South Africa.
yeah, definitely. But Africa as a whole is a land of his ancestors. So he sees the members as his ancestors.
Yeah, no, good. Yeah, no, that's great. That's good to know. Thank you. Okay, I think people have had to go.
Yeah.
But no, Sizo, that was a great little session.
No,
and thank you for answering all our questions, and you know, especially mine, because I've had quite a few. I've had more than I would.
Yeah. I'm glad. No, thank you so much. And I guess see you next time.
Next time, yeah. If we have a next time, hopefully.
Okay.
See what Ruchi and I can organize.
Okay, cool. Awesome.
All right.
Okay.
Pablo, good to see you again as well.
Yeah, nice to see you, Sarah.
All right.
Okay. Thank you, guys.
Thank you so
Thank you,
much.
Sizo.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye, Charlotte.